This video is brought to you by NordVPN, the most trusted VPN on the web. NordVPN protects you from unwanted guests and cybercriminals who could be snooping in on your web activity or trying to get your personal information like credit card numbers. NordVPN keeps all your internet activity private and, more importantly, safe. Also, it doesn't matter where you are. Nord has servers in almost 60 countries around the world, so you're covered pretty much anywhere. Right now, by using the link in the description below, users can get 4+ months absolutely free with a 2-year subscription. Keep in mind, NordVPN is absolutely 100% risk-free and has a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't love it, but honestly, I think you will. And did I mention that NordVPN also includes built-in ad block and anti-malware software for web browsing? So what are you waiting for? Sign up using the link in the description below and get yourself protected from those unwanted hackers and snoopers by using the best in the business. That's NordVPN.
I activate Pot of Greed. This card allows me to draw 2 new cards. Greed is good.
I play the magic card Pot of Greed. It allows me to draw 2 cards from my deck.
Now I'll draw the magic card Pot of Greed. Thanks to this card, I can now draw 2 new cards from my deck, Kaiba.
I'll play this, my Pot of Greed, a magic card that allows me to draw 2 more cards from my deck.
I play my Pot of Greed card. Huh, I bet you wish you'd drawn this card, don't you, Joseph? Now, I'm able to draw 2 new cards.
A simple little green pot that lets you draw 2 cards. Whether you're asking what it does as a meme or activating it in a GOAT format duel, just about everyone in this community knows that Pot of Greed isn't just one of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh history, but also one of the most iconic. You've seen it played in duels, you've seen it explained dozens of times in the Duel Monsters anime, and you've probably seen it appear in videos made by some of your favorite content creators. But did you know that the legendary Pot of Greed originally had a second effect? As an avid duelist of over 20 years, I consider myself a connoisseur of everything Yu-Gi-Oh history. However, as a content creator, I am not completely above making a video full of fun facts and some might argue useless trivia about everyone's favorite OG Draw 2 card. So today, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. In this video, history lessons are being set aside in favor of stuff you're more likely to see in a Reddit post. Welcome to Did You Know Pot of Greed Edition. First things first, what on earth am I talking about with Pot of Greed having some supposed second effect? That can't be true. That has to be 100% clickbait, right? We all know that the greedy pot just allows a duelist to draw 2 cards and that's it. Well, that's true, Pot of Greed does draw 2 cards. However, the first and original printing of the card in the OCG was a little more complex. It was released all the way back in the Volume 3 booster set, circa May 27, 1999. Side note, for anyone who hasn't seen any of my OCG DM history videos, the very first booster packs in the OCG were actually numbered and didn't really have names like Thousand Eyes Bible or Champion of Black Magic. Moving along, the very first Japanese printing of Pot of Greed translated to, quote, pull 2 cards from your deck, destroy Pot of Greed after it is played, unquote. It's a bit of a far cry from the draw 2 cards version that you're probably used to seeing, right? For starters, the OG Pot of Greed states pull 2 cards from your deck rather than draw 2. If taken at face value, this takes what is already one of the best staple cards of all time and makes it without a doubt one of the most powerful ones ever printed. A draw 2 with no cost is pretty insane in Yu-Gi-Oh! But a search 2 for any cards you want? Well, that's just mental. Secondly, you'll notice that Pot also destroyed itself after activation. Despite what conventional wisdom may have you believe about how ludicrous some of the original rules were for the OCG, and that's going to be an entire video in itself, this actually wasn't necessary to specify. According to the original Japanese rulebook translated by YGO Organization, spell cards, then known as magic cards, outside of field spells and equipped spells were destroyed after use and could not be used again. So having Pot of Greed destroy itself as part of its effect was quite clearly super redundant. I'm guessing Konami added this self-destruction effect onto the pot just to make it extra clear for players so they wouldn't attempt to use the same copy of the card numerous times in a turn. In fact, on that note, that's not the only adjustment that's been made to the card over the years. As unbelievable as this may sound for a card so simplistic, Pot of Greed has been errated in the OCG 5 separate times. Obviously, the first version of the card was a complete mess, so one of those makes sense, but there were also erratas to the card to change it from magic card to spell card, and some more pointless ones like changing the deck to your deck. Now to some fun facts. Despite being what appears to be nothing more than a fancy green clay pot, Pot of Greed actually is the most famous pot in the entire Duel world and has multiple uses. One of those uses is actually a working makeshift vacuum cleaner, somehow. I personally don't even understand how this works or how you would turn on and off the Pot of Greed vacuum, but that's a thing for some reason. Another one of its uses is far more sinister, as pot can be used for potential assassination. As odd and horrifying as that may sound, that's coming straight from the lore, so I didn't make that up. Pot of Greed, in fact, has a very dangerous and very dark nature, as anyone who places their hand inside of it has the ability to pull out something that brings them happiness. However, it, and them, most likely, will be short-lived, as the pot will explode once they take their hand out. This makes it ideal for assassinations, as it can be presented as a gift, as seen in the card Gift of Greed. This obviously disguises its deadly nature. The true dark nature of Pot of Greed is also alluded to on the Dark Spirit Art Greed Trap card. Because of Pot of Greed's destructive and dangerous ability within the Duel world, it has been deemed a forbidden and illegal item. Contrary to popular belief, this is what actually led to Sangan, the Demon Twins, and the Angel from Graceful Charity being arrested on the events of Shared Ride and Mistaken Arrest. It definitely makes sense too, as Pot of Greed is supposed to be a worldwide famous item that the authorities should instantly recognize, and of course with its ability to basically act as a living bomb, you can't just let monsters drive around the underworld with that in their trunk. One very smart question that has been posed by members of the Yu-Gi-Oh community, such as my fellow Yu-Gi-Tuber DZeef, has been, is the Pot of Greed alive? The answer to that is yes. At least it depends on your definition of alive. So maybe? It's kind of confusing. So there's a fairy who sometimes lives inside the pot. This can be seen in the card Spirit of the Pot of Greed. It's said that while the fairy is inside the pot, you actually become happier. This fairy was once a full-blown angel, so in theory it makes a lot of sense. Well, assuming that they're one of those happy angels like the Cupid Valentine's ones, not the combat ones from like Supernatural. Moving on, considering the spirit is alive, was confirmed to be a sentient being, and is most likely why people who stick their hands in are given something that brings them joy, one could say that the Pot of Greed acts more or less like a vessel, home, or body for the spirits, and thus is part of them as well. Going by that logic, the Pot of Greed is actually alive. However, the physical pot itself is not necessary for the spirit to remain alive, at least to my knowledge. Interestingly enough, it also appears that the physical pot's expression is solely based on the spirits. Usually Pot of Greed has a huge smile, and that's because the fairy's natural mood is happy. However, as seen on Jar Robber, when the Goblin of Greed steals the pot, the expression of the pot changes to afraid, presumably because the spirit itself was scared and distressed. Anyways, assuming that my theory of the spirit of the pot actually being the pot itself is correct, we also know that the spirit of the pot, one day, for some unexplained reason, suddenly transformed into a full-grown male adult, as seen on Avatar of the Pot. No one knows why or how this happened, but the lore specifically describes this figure as an adult form of the Pot of Greed. The reason I'm convinced that this is another form of the spirit of the pot is because on the card Goblin Circus, the full-bodied avatar appears in the background of the art, while the Goblin of Greed still has the physical Pot of Greed itself. Also, in case you're wondering what happened to the Goblin after he stole Pot of Greed, well, basically nothing good, for him anyways. He definitely got his in the end, as he quickly tried to pawn it off to a rich noble who demanded a refund when the handle broke. The Goblin was forced to return the pot to the shop, as he begged the shopkeeper for forgiveness for damaging it and stealing it in the first place. Honestly, the Pot of Greed just brought him more grief and bad karma than anything. Some other trivial facts include Pot of Greed being Yu-Gi-Oh's first ever draw card, it being used by basically every major protagonist and antagonist in the DM anime, as well as appearing in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX series up until episode 104, which, if you're thinking that that's around the time that Pot of Greed got banned, would be incorrect. Pot of Greed was banned on the October 2005 ban list, which I guess a lot of people just refer to as the one after GOAT format, which was basically a full year before that GX episode premiered on September 27, 2006. There's also the very popular "What Does Pot of Greed Do" meme and stuff like that, but that's just kind of more surface level stuff, and I really wanted to go for the more obscure details, facts, and trivia about Pot of Greed in this video. And with that, we are at the conclusion of this Yu-Gi-Oh! Video, and if I forgot about anything, or you've got your own Pot of Greed trivia that you'd like to share, leave it in the comment section below. I thank you very much for watching the video, and of course, check out the other Yu-Gi-Oh! Stories that I think you're going to enjoy that should be on the screen right now. Well, would you look at that? We're at the end of the video. Time to thank my patrons, my old buddy Garen, Brian Ford, Akina Sism, Volnuff, Israel Diaz, Ernesto Sanchez, Big Pimpin', and Ultimate Ace of Spades.